At our engagement party, she said, "Why would I have kids with a loser like you?" I called off the engagement. She tried grabbing the ring and had a meltdown that someone recorded. The family chat saw it within minutes, and by morning she had no support left. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a doozy. My engagement ended in the most spectacular fashion possible, complete with a viral video, a family group chat meltdown, and my ex losing literally everyone who ever supported her within about 12 hours. My buddy Nate said this story belongs here, so here we go. I'm 29, work as an electrical engineer for a mid-sized firm here in Arizona. Been at the same company since graduating college and worked my way up to senior project lead. Nothing crazy glamorous, but the salary's solid, I own my own place, and I've got a truck that's paid off sitting in my garage next to a 1972 Chevelle SS I've been restoring for the past 3 years. The house is a 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where your neighbors wave when they mow their lawns, and nobody has crazy parties at 2 a.m. I bought it foreclosed 3 years ago and spent every weekend for the first year fixing it up. New drywall in the master bedroom, completely redid the kitchen cabinets, installed hardwood floors myself after watching about 50 YouTube tutorials. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Every improvement, every upgrade was done with my own hands and my own money. My truck's a 2015 F-150. Bought it used with 40,000 miles, and it's been nothing but reliable ever since. Gets me to work, hauls materials for house projects, and never complains. Some guys are into flashy new rides, but I've always believed you take care of what you have, instead of constantly chasing the next thing. The Chevelle was my dad's project car that he never finished before he passed. Cancer took him when I was 22, right after I graduated. He'd been working on that thing since I was a kid, and finishing it became this mission for me. Every spare weekend, every vacation day, I'm in the garage with my hands covered in grease, working on something he started. It keeps him close, you know? My mom lives about 30 minutes away in a little house she's had since I was born. She's the sweetest woman alive, spends her time volunteering at the church and tending to her garden. After Dad died, I became the man of the family by default. Not that I minded. Taking care of my mom was never a burden. I go over there every Sunday for dinner, help with yard work, fix whatever needs fixing. She pretends she doesn't need the help, but I can tell she appreciates having me around. It's the least I can do for the woman who raised me, right? She taught me everything important, really. How to treat people with respect, how to work hard without complaining, how to be the same person whether you're talking to a CEO or a janitor. My dad reinforced all of it, but Mom was the architect of my character. Losing Dad nearly broke her, but she held it together for me, made sure I finished college, never let me see her fall apart even when I knew she was hurting. So, about 2.5 years ago, I met Rachel at a friend's wedding. She was a bridesmaid, looking absolutely stunning in this emerald dress that matched her eyes. We got to talking during the reception and just clicked. She laughed at my dumb jokes, seemed genuinely interested when I talked about my work, and when I mentioned the Chevelle, she actually asked to see pictures. I remember thinking this was different from the usual conversations I had with women at these things. No pretense, no weird games, just two people enjoying each other's company. She had this way of leaning in when I talked, like everything I said mattered. Made me feel like I was the only person in that entire reception hall. We exchanged numbers at the end of the night, and I texted her the next day to say I had a great time. She responded within minutes. Our first date was coffee at this little shop downtown, and we talked for 3 hours without even noticing the time pass. Second date was dinner at a steakhouse, where she ordered a ribeye instead of a salad and earned about 1,000 points in my book. Rachel worked as a dental hygienist at a practice downtown. Not the most exciting job in the world, but she seemed content with it. Lived in an apartment with a roommate, drove a sensible Honda, and had this infectious energy that made everyone around her feel good. Her family was another story, though. Her mom, Patricia, was this social climber type who married 3 times, each husband richer than the last. Current husband was Gerald, some retired executive who spent his days golfing and pretending his opinion mattered more than it did. They lived in this massive house in Scottsdale and threw parties just to show off. Rachel had a younger sister named Brittany who was basically a carbon copy of her mom. 24 years old, never worked a real job, and spent her days posting thirst traps on Instagram while waiting for some rich guy to wife her up. She'd already been through 2 engagements that fell apart when the guys realized she was more interested in their bank accounts than their personalities. Then there was Rachel's dad, Frank. He and Patricia divorced when Rachel was 12, and he remarried a woman named Donna, who was actually pretty cool. Frank was a plumber who built his own business from nothing. Down-to-earth guy, calloused hands, always had a joke ready. We got along immediately because we both understood what it meant to work for a living. Frank's side of the family was the opposite of Patricia's. They did barbecues in the backyard instead of catered events. They watched football games on regular TVS instead of projector screens. They gave hugs instead of air kisses. Every holiday, Rachel would split time between both families, and I could always tell which visits she enjoyed more. The thing about Rachel was that she seemed caught between these two worlds. Sometimes she'd be totally down to earth, helping me in the garage or cooking dinner at my place while we watched Netflix. Other times, especially after spending time with her mom, she'd make these little comments about upgrading things, or how nice it would be to have what other people had. I brushed it off mostly. Everyone wants nice things, right? And I wasn't exactly struggling. My house wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. My truck wasn't brand new, but it ran great. I figured she was just being influenced by her mom temporarily and would snap out of it. We dated for about 18 months before I proposed. Did the whole thing right too. Asked her dad Frank for his blessing, which he gave enthusiastically while warning me that Patricia would try to take over any wedding planning. Found out her ring size through her best friend Amanda. Picked out a 2-carat princess cut that set me back about 15 grand, which was basically my entire savings, plus some overtime money I'd been squirreling away. The proposal happened at this botanical garden where we'd had our first real date. Got down on one knee during sunset. The whole 9 yards. She cried, said yes, and for about 3 seconds I thought I was the luckiest guy alive. Then the planning started. Patricia immediately tried to hijack everything. Suddenly the wedding wasn't about Rachel and me. It was about impressing her country club friends. She pushed for venues I couldn't afford, guest lists that included people neither of us had ever met, and a wedding party that kept growing every week. I tried to set boundaries, said we'd pay for what we could afford, and anything beyond that would need to come from whoever wanted it. Patricia didn't like that. Started making these passive-aggressive comments about how her daughters deserved the best, and it was too bad some people couldn't provide that. Rachel defended me at first, told her mom to back off, said she was happy with our plans. But over time, I noticed her resolve weakening. She'd come home from visits with Patricia all worked up about things we absolutely needed to have. Stuff we'd agreed wasn't important suddenly became essential. The engagement lasted 8 months before the party happened. Patricia insisted on throwing us an engagement party at her Scottsdale house. I didn't love the idea, but Rachel really wanted it, and her dad said it would be a good chance for both families to meet properly before the wedding. My side of the guest list was simple. My mom, my Uncle Dave and his wife, my cousin Jake and his girlfriend, and about 5 of my closest friends, including Nate, who'd been my best friend since middle school. Total of maybe 12 people. Rachel's mom invited over 60, most of them I'd never met. Country club couples, business associates of Gerald's, random people from Patricia's book club or whatever. The guest list was basically a who's who of people trying to outdo each other. The party was on a Saturday afternoon in September, Arizona. September is still brutal, but Patricia had this whole backyard setup with misters and shade structures and a catering team that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. There were ice sculptures, a live band playing jazz standards nobody asked for, and waiters walking around with trays of appetizers that looked more like art projects than food. I wore slacks and a nice button-down because Rachel said that was appropriate. She'd actually picked out the shirt herself, said the blue brought out my eyes. My mom wore her Sunday best and looked nervous the entire drive over because she knew she was walking into Patricia's territory. I held her hand and told her everything would be fine. My Uncle Dave and his wife Carol met us in the driveway, both looking uncomfortable before we even walked inside. Dave pulled me aside and said, "Remember, we're here for you, not for any of these other people. You give the word and we're out of here." I appreciated that more than he. Nate showed up with his girlfriend Melissa, who I could tell was already annoyed by the pretentiousness. She leaned over to me during the walk-in and whispered, "There's an ice sculpture of a swan." "A swan, Jason. Who needs a swan made of ice?" I told her to wait until she saw the appetizers. Everything was not fine. From the moment we walked in, I could feel the judgment. Patricia greeted my mom with this fake smile and a handshake instead of a hug. Gerald looked at my truck in the driveway like it was lowering his property values. Brittany literally looked me up and down and made this face like she'd smelled something bad. But I kept my cool. This was for Rachel, and I could survive a few hours of these people if it made her happy. The party went relatively okay for the first couple hours. I stuck with my people mostly, introducing my mom around, catching up with Nate and the guys, keeping an eye on Rachel as she worked the room. She seemed happy, which was what mattered. Then Patricia clinked her glass and called everyone to attention for toasts. Gerald went first with some generic speech about welcoming me to the family. Didn't even get my job right. Called me an electrician instead of an electrical engineer, but whatever. Patricia followed with this whole thing about her beautiful daughter finding love, and how she hoped we'd build a wonderful life together, which felt surprisingly genuine, until she added something about how maybe we could move closer to them someday. Subtle. Rachel's dad, Frank, gave a great toast. Talked about how I was exactly the kind of man he'd hoped his daughter would end up with. Hardworking, honest, good values. Said his only complaint was that I was a Chevy guy instead of a Ford guy, which got a big laugh from my side and confused looks from Patricia's crew. Then it was time for Rachel to say something. She stood up with this glass in her hand, looking gorgeous in this white sundress she'd bought specifically for the occasion. Everyone got quiet, waiting for her to deliver some heartfelt speech about our relationship. Instead, she took a deep breath and said something that still echoes in my head. So, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about the future, about what I really want, and standing here, looking at both sides of my family, I've had some realizations. I remember thinking this was a weird way to start a toast, but okay, maybe she was going somewhere with it. When I was younger, I always dreamed of a certain kind of life. A beautiful house, nice cars, being able to travel and not worry about money. And I thought love would be enough to get there. But lately I've realized that's not realistic. The backyard was completely silent now. My mom grabbed my hand. Nate was staring at Rachel with his mouth slightly open. And honestly, looking at what my life would be if I married Jason, she paused and looked directly at me, with something like contempt in her eyes. Why would I want to have kids with a loser like him? He's never going to be anything more than what he is right now. A guy who plays with cars on weekends and thinks a middle-class salary is something to be proud of. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. My mom's grip on my hand tightened. I could feel my Uncle Dave standing up behind me. Somewhere across the yard, Frank said something like, "Rachel, what the heck?" But it sounded distant, like I was underwater. Rachel kept going, like she'd been waiting to say this for months and couldn't stop now. My mom's right. I deserve better. I deserve someone with actual ambition who can give me the life I want, not someone who's going to trap me in some boring existence where the highlight of our year is finishing some stupid old car his dead dad left behind. She actually said that. About my dad. About the Chevelle. Something in me shifted at that moment. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. Like someone had pulled back a curtain and shown me exactly who I'd been about to marry. I stood up slowly. Everyone was watching me, probably expecting me to either cry or explode. I did neither. "Rachel," I said, keeping my voice completely level. "Give me the ring back." She blinked, like she hadn't expected that response. "What?" "The ring. The one I spent $15,000 on. The one that's sitting on your finger right now. Take it off and give it to me." Patricia jumped in immediately. "Now wait just a minute. That ring was a gift. Legally, it's hers." "Actually," I said, still calm. "In Arizona, an engagement ring is considered a conditional gift. The condition is marriage. Since there's clearly not going to be a marriage now, the ring returns to me. I looked that up after my buddy's engagement fell apart last year." I held out my hand to Rachel. "Ring, now." Here's where things got interesting. Rachel's face went through about 6 different emotions. Shock that I wasn't begging her to reconsider. Confusion about why I wasn't fighting for her. Then this desperate sort of panic as she realized what she'd just done in front of everyone. "Jason, wait, I didn't mean... I was just..." She started backpedaling. "You called me a loser in front of 60 people. You mocked my dead father. You announced to everyone here that you think you're too good for me." I kept my hand out. "Ring. No, you can't do this. You can't just end things because I was being honest about my feelings." "Honest?" I actually laughed. "You just torpedoed our entire relationship in front of both our families because you think you deserve some rich guy instead of me. That's not honesty, that's cruelty. And I don't marry cruel people." Patricia tried to step in again, putting herself between me and Rachel. "Young man, you need to calm down and think about what you're doing. Rachel is emotional right now and you're overreacting." "Overreacting?" My Uncle Dave was beside me now. "Lady, your daughter just called my nephew a loser and insulted his deceased brother in front of everyone. If anything, he's underreacting." "Stay out of this," Patricia snapped. "This is a family matter." "He is family," my mom said, standing up with this steel in her voice I'd rarely heard. "And what your daughter just did was unforgivable. My son is worth 10 of any man you'd pick for her." Rachel started crying then. Not the sad kind of crying, but the frustrated kind, like when a kid doesn't get their way. "Mom, do something. He can't just leave me. Watch me." I turned to my mom. "Get your things. We're leaving." That's when Rachel lunged at me. I'm not kidding. She actually grabbed at my arm, trying to stop me from walking away. When I pulled back, she grabbed at my shirt instead, yanking at the fabric hard enough to pop a button. "You don't get to do this to me," she was screaming now. "You don't get to humiliate me like this at my own party." "Your own party?" "Rachel, you just humiliated yourself. I didn't do anything except stand here and listen to you reveal exactly who you are. She tried to grab me again, this time going for my face. I caught her wrist and held it firmly but gently, not trying to hurt her, just stopping her from hitting me. That's when she completely lost it. Let go of me! Everyone see what he's doing? He's hurting me! Except he wasn't. I was barely touching her, and everyone could see that. My grip was loose enough that she could have pulled away easily. I wasn't trying to restrain her, just prevent her from scratching my face off. Several people had their phones out now. In this day and age, when someone starts screaming, the first instinct is to record. Probably hoping for content, maybe preparing to be witnesses. Who knows? The point is, everything that happened next was captured from multiple angles. Frank pushed through the crowd and physically pulled Rachel away from me. That's enough, he said in this voice that meant business. Rachel, you need to stop right now. Daddy, he's trying to steal my ring. It's his ring, sweetheart. And honestly, after what you just said, I don't blame him for wanting it back. Frank's face was this mixture of anger and disappointment that I'd never seen before. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. Donna, his wife, had her hand on his shoulder like she was worried he might do something he'd regret. That seemed to shock Rachel more than anything. Her own father taking my side. She looked around the crowd, expecting support, but all she saw were horrified faces. Even some of Patricia's friends looked disgusted. One woman in a massive sun hat was literally shaking her head in disbelief. Give him the ring, Rachel, Frank said quietly. No. That's when Brittany, of all people, decided to get involved. She'd been filming the whole thing on her phone, probably planning to post it somewhere for engagement. Rachel, just give him the ring so everyone can move on. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I just told the truth about how I feel and everyone's attacking me. You called him a loser and insulted his dead dad at your own engagement party, Brittany said with this uncharacteristic clarity. That's not telling the truth. That's being a monster. Rachel's head whipped toward her sister. Excuse me. I'm not defending this, Brittany said, gesturing around. Even I know this is messed up, and my standards are pretty low. While this was happening, Nate had pulled out his phone and started recording. Not obviously, just holding it casually like he was checking messages. Later, he told me he had a feeling this was going to be important. The standoff lasted another few minutes before Patricia finally convinced Rachel to take off the ring. She practically threw it at me, hitting me in the chest before it bounced off and landed on the ground. I picked it up, inspected it for damage, and put it in my pocket. You're going to regret this, Rachel hissed at me. When you're alone and miserable, you're going to remember what you threw away. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I'd never actually known this person at all. The Rachel I'd dated, the one who laughed at my jokes and seemed interested in my life, that was either an act or someone who died the moment she spent too much time around Patricia. I don't think I will, I said honestly. Goodbye, Rachel. My mom, my uncle, and my friends all walked out with me. We left the party in complete silence, got in our vehicles, and drove away. Nobody said anything for the first few minutes. The drive felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my own body. Part of me kept expecting to wake up, like this was some kind of stress nightmare before the real engagement party. But the steering wheel under my hands was real. The sound of the engine was real. The weight of that ring in my pocket was very real. My uncle followed us in his car, protective mode fully activated. I could see him in my rearview mirror, jaw set, probably running through the same mental replay I was. Then my mom, sitting in my passenger seat, reached over and patted my hand. I never liked her anyway. That broke the tension. I actually laughed. First genuine laugh I'd managed in what felt like hours. Mom, you told me she was lovely just last month. I was being polite. Her table manners were atrocious and she talked about herself too much. She squeezed my hand. You deserve someone who sees your worth, baby, not someone who measures it against a bank statement. We ended up at Nate's place, all 12 of us crammed into his living room, eating pizza and processing what just happened. My mom fell asleep on Nate's couch around 9, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. Aunt Carol covered her with a blanket and said she'd keep an eye on her. The rest of us stayed up talking. Uncle Dave kept pacing, still worked up about the whole thing. I should have said something. When she started that speech, I should have walked up there and ended it before she got to the bad part. Nobody saw that coming, I told him. There was no way to predict she was about to do that. Your dad would have handled it better, he said, then immediately looked guilty for bringing up my father. Dad would have handled it exactly the same way, I said. Walk away with dignity. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you break down. Nate's girlfriend Melissa had been quiet most of the night, but she finally spoke up. Can I just say, as a woman, that what Rachel did was the most embarrassing thing I've ever witnessed? Like, I'm embarrassed for my entire gender right now. That was unhinged behavior. Around 10 o'clock, Nate showed me what he'd recorded. It wasn't perfect quality, but it caught everything. Rachel's speech, her meltdown, her trying to grab me, her throwing the ring. All of it. You want me to delete it? He asked. I thought about it for maybe 2 seconds. Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. My phone had been blowing up since we left the party. Messages from Rachel alternating between apologizing and blaming me. Messages from Patricia threatening legal action if I didn't return the ring. Messages from Rachel's friends calling me heartless for leaving her like that. I ignored all of them. The next morning, I woke up to about 40 new notifications. Frank had texted me at 6 a.m. apologizing again for his daughter's behavior and saying he and Donna wanted to take me to lunch when I was ready. That was nice. But the really interesting stuff was happening in the family group chat. See, Rachel's extended family had this massive group chat that included everyone from Patricia's side, Frank's side, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole crew. I'd been added to it when we got engaged and never thought to leave. What I woke up to was absolute chaos. Apparently, one of Patricia's own friends had recorded part of Rachel's meltdown and shared it with someone who shared it with someone else. And by midnight, it had made its way into the family chat. Then Brittany, who I guess felt some kind of guilt, added Nate's more complete recording. The reactions were brutal. Rachel's grandmother, this sweet old lady I'd met twice, wrote a whole paragraph about how ashamed she was. Rachel's aunt posted a picture of me and my mom at some family barbecue and said we were the kindest people she'd ever met, and she was sick about what Rachel had done. Cousins I barely knew were weighing in about how they always knew something was off about Rachel. Even some of Patricia's friends who were on the chat were commenting. One of them said she was embarrassed to have been there and couldn't believe Patricia raised a daughter who would say those things. Patricia tried to do damage control, posted this long message about how the video was taken out of context, and Rachel was just nervous and said things she didn't mean. Nobody bought it. Frank posted once just a simple statement. What Rachel said was inexcusable. I've spent all night trying to understand how my daughter could be so cruel to a good man who loved her. I don't have answers. Jason, you have my deepest apologies and my respect for how you handled yourself. That one got about 40 heart reactions. By noon on Sunday, the tide had completely turned. Rachel's support system had collapsed. Her friends were distancing themselves, saying they couldn't defend what she'd said. Her family was either silent or actively condemning her. Even Brittany, who usually backed her sister no matter what, was posting about how some things were unforgivable. Rachel called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. She texted increasingly desperate messages about how she didn't mean it. She was just stressed about the wedding. She'd been listening to her mom too much. She loved me and wanted to work things out. I read every message and felt nothing. Around 3 in the afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. Turned out to be Gerald, Patricia's husband. He wanted to meet for coffee and talk man to man. I almost said no, but something told me to hear what he had to say. We met at a Starbucks near my place. Gerald showed up looking tired, like he hadn't slept. He ordered some complicated drink and we sat in a corner booth. I'm not here to defend what Rachel said, he started. What she did was wrong. Period. I nodded, waiting to see where this was going. I've been married to Patricia for 8 years. In that time, I've watched her turn into someone I barely recognize. The social climbing, the obsession with appearances, the way she measures everyone by their net worth. He sighed and rubbed his eyes. She's poisoned Rachel with that attitude. Not that it excuses anything, but I thought you should understand the context. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you, Jason. You remind me of myself 30 years ago. Young guy with a good head on his shoulders, working hard, not trying to impress anyone. He took a sip of his drink. I made a lot of money in my career. And you know what it got me? A wife who cares more about her social status than her marriage, and 2 stepdaughters who think money is the only measure of a man's worth. He slid something across the table. An envelope. What's this? $20,000. Call it compensation for the ring and everything else you've been through. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I wanted to do something. I stared at the envelope. Part of me wanted to refuse it on principle. But then I thought about that 15 grand I'd spent on the ring, the money I'd put toward wedding deposits, the overtime I'd worked to try to give Rachel the wedding she wanted. Thank you, I said, taking the envelope. This is unexpected. One more thing, Gerald said. Patricia is going to try to spin this whole situation, make you the villain somehow. She's already working on it. Just be prepared. He was right about that. Over the next week, Patricia launched a full-scale PR campaign within her social circle, told everyone that I was actually abusive, that Rachel was only speaking out because she felt trapped, that I'd manipulated her into the engagement in the first place. Real creative stuff. Except the video existed, and every time someone heard Patricia's version, they'd eventually see the footage and realize she was lying. Rachel's best friend Amanda reached out to me that Wednesday. We'd always gotten along well. and she seemed genuinely distraught about everything. "I just want you to know I don't believe any of what they're saying about you," she said. "I was there for most of your relationship. I know who you are." "Thanks, Amanda. That means a lot." Rachel's a mess right now. Her mom's convinced her that if she just waits, you'll come crawling back. She doesn't understand that's not happening, does she? It's definitely not happening. Good. I mean, not good for her, but good for you. You deserve better. She paused. Also, I might have accidentally forwarded the full video to about 30 people who were spreading Patricia's lies. Oops. I actually laughed at that. Accidentally? My finger slipped 30 times. The aftermath hit Rachel fast and hard over the next few months. First, her two closest friends dropped her within a week. Jessica and Madison both saw the video, compared it to Patricia's lies, and sent Rachel identical texts saying they couldn't associate with someone who would do that to a good person. Jessica even reached out to me to apologize for any role she might have played in enabling Rachel's behavior. Said she'd been questioning Rachel's character for a while, but never expected anything this bad. Then her job fell apart. The dental practice she worked at was small, family-owned, and word travels fast in the dental community around here. Her boss called her into the office 3 weeks after the party and told her that several patients had recognized her from the video and requested different hygienists. Two of them were longtime patients who specifically said they didn't feel comfortable having someone with that character cleaning their teeth. They let her go with 2 weeks severance and a lukewarm reference letter. She moved back in with Patricia and Gerald by October. I heard from Frank that the house became a war zone. Gerald was furious about the whole situation and blamed Patricia for poisoning their daughter with her social climbing nonsense. They started sleeping in separate bedrooms within a month. Patricia's country club friends started declining invitations to her events, making excuses about scheduling conflicts that everyone knew were lies. The social circle she'd spent years building was crumbling brick by brick. Rachel tried dating again around November. Some finance bro named Bradley that Patricia set her up with through her golf connections. They went on 3 dates before he Googled her name, found the video on a compilation channel with 200,000 views, and ghosted her completely. Blocked her number, blocked her on all social media, just vanished. Frank told me she cried for a week after that one. I felt nothing. Someone at Patricia's country club anonymously printed out screenshots from the video and left them in the women's locker room. Patricia found out when 3 different women asked her about it during a charity luncheon. She left early and didn't come back for 2 months. Meanwhile, I finished the Chevelle. 3 years of weekends, and that 454 big block finally turned over on a Saturday morning in late October. The sound of that engine rumbling to life was the best thing I'd heard in months. Nate was there, my Uncle Dave was there, and we all just stood in my garage grinning like idiots. Took her to a car show in Tucson a few weeks later. Won best in class for muscle cars. The trophy sits on my mantle now, right next to a picture of my dad working on that same car 20 years ago. Work picked up too. Got promoted to lead a major infrastructure project, which came with a 15% raise and my own office. My boss pulled me aside after the announcement and said he'd been watching how I handled the engagement fallout. Said my professionalism and focus during a personal crisis told him everything he needed to know about my character. About 4 months after the party, I was filling up the Chevelle at a gas station when this woman at the next pump started asking about the car. Wanted to know what year it was, how long the restoration took, whether I did the work myself. Her name was Diana. High school history teacher, drove a beat-up Jeep with a cracked windshield, and had this smile that hit different than anything I'd seen before. We talked for 20 minutes right there at the pumps. Exchanged numbers. First date was that weekend at a barbecue place she recommended. Diana was nothing like Rachel. Showed up to our first date in jeans and a t-shirt, no designer anything, no pretense. When I told her about my job, she asked actual questions about electrical engineering instead of glazing over. When I mentioned the Chevelle, she asked if she could see it. I brought her to my garage on our 3rd date. She climbed into the driver's seat, ran her hands over the steering wheel, and asked me to tell her about my dad. So I did. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, then said, "He'd be really proud of what you built." No girl had ever said that to me before. Things moved fast after that, but in a good way. By month 2, she'd met my mom. Brought homemade cookies and spent 3 hours talking about gardening. My mom called me that night and said, "That one. Keep that one." By month 4, Diana had her own drawer at my place and a spare key. She started learning about cars, would hand me tools in the garage while I worked on whatever project I had going. Actually remembered the difference between a socket wrench and a torque wrench, which was more than Rachel ever managed. 6 months in, I ran into Rachel at a grocery store. She looked rough. Tired eyes, messy hair, wearing sweatpants in public like she'd given up. She spotted me before I could escape. "Jason, hi." "Rachel." She stared at the flowers and groceries in my cart. "Special occasion?" Just Tuesday. Her face crumpled a little. I heard you're seeing someone. A teacher. Diana, yeah. Is it serious? Yeah, it is. She nodded slowly, then started crying right there in the produce section. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. What I said at the party about your dad, about you being a loser, I was wrong about everything. I waited for her to finish. I lost my job. Bradley ghosted me. My mom and Gerald are probably getting divorced. Half her friends won't talk to her anymore. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. I had everything and I threw it away because I thought I deserved more. Turns out more doesn't exist. I hope you figure things out, Rachel. I really do. And I meant it. Not because I cared about her anymore, but because holding on to anger was exhausting, and I had better things to do. I hope she makes you happy, Rachel said. Diana, I hope she knows what she has. She does. I walked away and didn't look back. 3 months later, Diana and I were at Frank's house for a barbecue. Yeah, I still hang out with Rachel's dad. Donna makes incredible ribs, and Frank's become like an uncle to me. He actually apologized again that day, said he still couldn't believe his daughter turned out like Patricia. Donna pulled me aside and said I was always welcome there, that I was family regardless of what happened with Rachel. That same weekend, Gerald filed for divorce. Apparently, he'd been planning it for months, just waiting for the right moment. Patricia got the house but lost access to most of the money, since Gerald had a prenup she'd apparently forgotten about. The prenup was from his second marriage, and Patricia never thought to renegotiate it because she assumed she'd be with Gerald forever. Bad assumption. Last I heard, she's trying to sell the Scottsdale place and downsize to a condo because she can't afford the property taxes on her own. Gerald actually invited me to lunch after the divorce was finalized, wanted to tell me in person that he was sorry for how everything went down. Said, watching Rachel destroy a good relationship for shallow reasons made him realize Patricia had been doing the same thing to their marriage for years. He's dating someone new now, a retired nurse he met at the gym. Says she's nothing like Patricia, and that's exactly the point. Brittany, shockingly, turned out okay. Met some normal guy at a coffee shop, got engaged the regular way, and actually seems happy. She sent me a message apologizing for how her family treated me and said she hopes I'm doing well. I told her no hard feelings and meant it. Rachel moved to another city about 8 months after everything went down. Took a job at a dental office in New Mexico, far enough away that she wouldn't run into anyone who'd seen the video. Frank says she calls him once a month and sounds better each time. Maybe she's actually learning something. Maybe not. Either way, not my problem. As for me and Diana, we just signed a lease on a bigger place together. Used the money from selling Rachel's ring plus Gerald's gift as the down payment. Moving in next month. My mom's already planning where she's going to put plants on our new patio. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.